Oh,
My wife had a bit more of a sore arm with the second shot, but she said other than feeling a little sore in the arm, it didn't bother her at all. But,
There you go. That's
So-
the expectation right
Yeah.
there that we're gonna all have, right?
yeah. Okay, we do have a quorum. It's 7:32 a.m. So I'm going to go ahead and call this meeting to order for Unified Fire Authority, February 16th, 2021. Chief already welcomed Councilmember Glover. I'll welcome him again. He's sitting in place for Mayor Hale today.
Thank you.
Appreciate you being here. And like you said, we haven't seen you for a
Good
little
to see
while,
you.
but we're happy to see you back.
Yeah.
One other item of housekeeping before we get too far into the meeting. When we started doing electronic meetings, we moved to all roll call votes. Today, we're going to go back a little bit to some more of our normal routine. So when I ask for a verbal vote, I'll just ask you all to unmute and do a verbal vote together as a board. But we will still have some items that are a roll call vote. So I'll kind of specify those as we go along. So we'll move to item 2 on the agenda, and that's public comment. Cindy or Patrick, do we have any that we've received beforehand?
I didn't through email. I didn't receive any.
Okay. And Pat, do we have any, is there anyone in the public meeting that would like to give public comment?
Looks like nope, nothing.
Okay. All right, thank you. We will move on to item 3, and that's administer oath of office for new board members. As was mentioned, I believe last month, Council Member Dia Theodore from Salt Lake County Council will replace Councilmember Snellgrove on the board for Unified Fire Authority. I don't see her present in the meeting at this point.
She's here, Chair
Oh,
Perry.
and now I see her. Okay, I just see her. Sorry, got moved over. So Councilmember Theodore, you can hear us now? Okay, so we'd like to welcome you to the board. We're happy to have you here.
Thank you.
Yeah, and we will administer the oath of office for you today, if that's all right. We'll have Cindy go ahead and move forward with that.
Okay, you have been appointed by the community that you serve to represent its citizens on this board of directors. Your actions as a board member directly reflect on the Unified Fire Authority and the service it provides. Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I state your name.
I, D. Theodore,
Do solemnly swear that I will discharge the duties of my office
do solemnly swear that I will discharge the duties of my office
with fidelity, uphold the vision, mission, values, and policies adopted by Unified Fire Authority,
with fidelity, uphold the vision, mission, values, and policies adopted by Unified Fire Authority,
and act for the good of the communities which it serves.
and act for the good of the communities which it serves.
I will strive for excellence while faithfully, honestly, and ethically
I will strive for excellence while faithfully, honestly, and ethically
performing the duties of board member with Unified Fire Authority.
performing the duties of board member with Unified Fire Authority.
You are now duly affirmed as a board member for Unified Fire. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember Theodore, and thank you, Cindy. Again, welcome. We're happy to have you here. Okay, item 4 on the agenda is the minutes approval from January 19th, 2021. Look for a motion on those minutes.
Mr. Chair, Jeff Silvestrini, I move to approve the minutes.
Mayor Peterson, I'll second that.
Okay, so we've got a motion by Mayor Silvestrini and a second by Mayor Peterson. And on this item, we'll ask for a verbal vote if you'll unmute your mics. So all those in favor?
Aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay, thank you. Item 5 on the agenda is the consent agenda. It's a review of January disbursements. Are there any questions from the board for Tony for January disbursements? Or Tony, if there's anything you'd like to address.
Yeah, no, Chair Perry, there is nothing specific for January.
The disbursements are on page 11 for the board members.
Thank you, Tony. And if there's no questions, I'll ask for a motion on the consent agenda.
Mayor Peterson, I move adoption of the consent agenda.
Stewart, I'll second.
Okay, motion by Mayor Peterson and a second by Councilmember Stewart. And we'll ask for a verbal vote of the board. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 Thank you. And any opposed? Okay, thank you. Item 6 on the agenda is our committee updates. So I'll ask each of the committee chairs if they have any updates. Benefits and compensation, Chair Dolly.
No updates. We are scheduled to meet Thursday, I believe, at 7:30 a.m. We moved that meeting to accommodate those that serve on the UPD board. So that meeting will start at 7:30. So members of that committee, just kind of, if you wouldn't mind making sure that you are able to attend, and if not, let Cindy know. But we'll link up and hopefully get some information from Gallagher and see where we're at.
Okay,
That's it for me.
Thank you. Chair Silvestrini, any updates for the governance committee?
No, Mr. Chair, that we didn't meet and had no business, fortunately.
Okay. All right, and Chair Stewart, updates for the finance committee.
Just the same upcoming meetings that are for the budget process that follow what Mayor Dally just mentioned.
Okay, thank you. And maybe, and just by, I guess, by way of information for Councilmember Theodore, the subcommittees, each of them, when they hold a meeting, it's held as a public meeting. So any board member is welcome to attend. You're also welcome, to think about if you want to be on any of those committees specifically. The finance committee is governed by its own kind of set of rules, but the other two subcommittees, if you want to participate as a member of those committees, you're welcome to, and we can formalize that later on. Or if you just want to attend any of the meetings, you're welcome to. Okay. Item 7 on the agenda. I'll ask Chief Whittison to discuss. It's a consideration of a proposal for 3 additional full-time employees within the Wildland Division. And there's a memo on page 15 of your packet.
Yes, thank you, Chair Perry. And good morning, board members. It's a pleasure to be here. Like Chair Perry said, I'm here to request board approval for 3 variable schedule full-time employees within the Wildland Division. During last year's budget process, we described the concept of the Wildland crew becoming a Type 1 interagency hotshot crew. In the budget message, we outlined that the division would investigate the value and the sustainability of this program, and then we would bring it to the board for approval at the end of the 2020 wildland season. This hotshot designation will provide more deployment opportunities and will help maintain a consistent leadership team for the hand crew moving forward. During the 2020 season, the hand crew was placed on Type 1 hotshot trainee status, and they did receive more frequent and longer duration assignments than a typical Type 2 team would normally get during the season. This program will require 3 new permanent career positions in the Wildland Division. However, these positions would be funded as a variable schedule full-time employee at a cost of $43,500 each year for salaries and benefits. There is a minimal pay increase related to the cost, and these positions would also receive overtime during the season. The division would need a budget amendment of $20,695 for this fiscal year, which would be brought to the board next month. The variable schedule full-time employee positions would work full-time in the summer, and they would receive health benefits from UFA year-round. If approved, the crew will continue to be classified as a trainee hotshot crew with the goal of being fully qualified in fiscal year 23-24. We believe this program has value, and we believe that the increased deployments and the increased revenue will allow the costs of these positions to be fully funded from wildland revenues. The wildland fund balance has the funds for this fiscal year's amendment as well. So with that, I would be happy to take any questions related to this.
Chief Whittison, have we ever had a hotshot crew in the past, or is this a completely new?
This is completely new. We've had a wildland crew since 1992 is the first year that we had a wildland crew. This is the first time we've endeavored to get that type 1 hotshot crew designation.
Are there questions from the board member for Chief Whittison?
Mayor Peterson, Chief, maybe you could just, it's a simple question, you've probably already answered it, but the funding for this comes out of doesn't come out of the fund balance or anything like that. It comes from the program itself, and it's self-sustaining. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So this would allow us to have more frequent deployments than what we have in the past, and which historically has been the case for a type 2 crew, which is what we are right now. We've done a cost analysis, and we've done a historical look at type 1 crew, hotshot crews versus type 2 crews, and found that they do definitely have an increase in their deployments during the summer. With those deployments will come reimbursements and revenue within the Wildland Fund, and that's how we will sustain this cost moving forward.
Good, thank you.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions from the board for Chief Whittison?
Chair, this is Catherine.
Go ahead.
So I just have a follow-up to Mayor Peterson's. So Chief, it sounds to me then that the only risk to this would be that for some reason this crew was to be not funded because they were not deployed, but it sounds like that's an unlikely scenario given the frequent nature of wildfires that we've been seeing over the last few years. Do you agree with that?
Oh, I definitely agree with that. We have seen an increase in deployments already, but certainly type 1 crews are deployed more often than type 2 crews. They're a national crew. They're utilized nationally, and they're one of the first resources that gets deployed on these large wildland fires, or any wildland fire really. Type 1 crew is deployed first. With that, and also historically what's been happening in the wildland world of increased large fires, we feel like that this is sustainable moving forward.
Thank you for that confirmation. No, it did. I mean, given that, it seems like this is something that's worthy to move forward on. That there seems like there's not a significant fiscal risk on this, and clearly it's a need that is increasingly growing.
You know, Chair Perry, I'll comment just a little on our side, is that this has been a long-term goal of the Wildland Division, and one that I've held back in being supportive of until this year, predominantly because there needed to be a number of things done in the Wildland Division to make sure that it was sustainable. There were some challenges 4 or 5 years ago, and between Chief Pilgrim and Burchett and now Chief Whittison, the program is running really effectively, balanced properly. If you remember, Chief Whittison received a bit of a loan from the fund balance last year, and then came and shared that he repaid that loan. But a lot of what he's done is made sure that the deployments are cost effective and worth the energy, and a little more about the value to UFA than maybe the value to an individual that's deploying. That change leads me to support this. Not to mention, like Catherine Cantor mentioned, if this doesn't work, he simply stops this program's extra funding, right? He can quickly correct that, and he's built up a fund balance that would allow for a bad season to still not be an impact to UFA. So he's replenished those funds and can weather a lower deployment, but with his wider breadth of deployment itself and his fiscal awareness, I'm happy to support this as a path. The training that we get from these hotshots going out, we hire probably 20–30% of our new hires come from his program long-term. And that experience then is sitting in our fire stations year-round after they've had a few years of experience. So the hotshot experience makes it even better for us going long-term to keep that cycle going. So we're fully supportive of this, or honestly, you wouldn't see it on the agenda.
Great, thank you, Chief. Mayor Sondak?
Are we ready for a motion?
Yeah.
Okay, so I, Harris Sondak, move to approve 3 additional FTEs within the Wildland Division to transition to an interagency hotshot crew as we've just discussed.
Thank you.
Chair
Jeff
Peter,
Silverstream, I'll second.
Okay, so we do have a motion from Mayor Sondak in a couple of seconds. So we'll ask for a verbal vote on this item. All those in favor?
aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, thank you. And thank you, Chief Widdowson, for
Thank
being
you.
here.
Appreciate it.
Right, item 8 on the agenda, and this is on page 17 of your packet. We'll ask Assistant Chief Burchett to review this proposal to purchase 16 mobile data computers.
Thank you, Chair Perry. As you said, we're on page 17. There's a short memo that goes along with this agenda item. In the January board meeting, Chief Peterson, during his fire chief report, mentioned the idea of purchasing 16 of the mobile device computers for our frontline ambulances. Currently, they do not have a dedicated MDC, which is the way that they communicate with our dispatch center. So the memo kind of just describes quickly a real quick review of what Chief Peterson brought up in January. And so this is, we're looking for a motion to be able to purchase those 16 units to allow us to have a dedicated unit in all of our frontline apparatus moving forward. So, and as the memo states, we will be presenting for next year's budget a purchase of a replacement for all frontline units. So by being able to buy 16 now, we'll actually decrease that number by 16 units for next year's budget. The total cost for this is $99,200, and that is the high range of what we're looking at. We have 3 units being tested right now, and that $99,200 is the most expensive unit, which includes the mounting and all of the software that's included. Is there any questions I can answer on that one?
I guess for clarification, this would then be a budget amendment to our budget?
Yes, and that budget amendment will be presented next month.
Okay.
I know we discussed this last month a little bit. Are there any other questions for Dominic? If not, then I'll look for a motion on the proposal.
I'll go and do that. Mayor Peterson would move approval of the purchase of the 16 mobile data computers.
Mayor Overson, second.
Mayor, can you include with capital replacement funds as part of your motion? Would that be favorable?
Absolutely. I'll amend my motion to include with using of capital funds.
Mayor Overson, second.
Okay. All right, so we do have that motion by Mayor Peterson and a second by Mayor Overson, and I'll ask for a verbal vote of the board. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
And any opposed? Okay, thank you. And as was mentioned, that moves us on to item 9. We will be looking for a public hearing in March to consider comments on proposed amendments to the budget. That will include the 16 mobile data computers, as well as the wildland adjustments we just made. So I'll look for a motion to set that date of March 16th for public hearing.
The motion made by Councilmember Stewart.
Kathleen Bailey, I'll second.
Thank you. And I should have asked before I move forward with the vote, Tony, is there anything else you want to address with that public hearing?
No, I mean, yeah, we'll have those two amendments you just talked about. We'll have some CARES funding, COVID leave amendments that we've been talking about. Couple deployments that will get amended in the budget. So, and a few other grants and miscellaneous items.
Okay, thank you. I apologize for not having you review that first.
No worries, thanks.
We've got a motion by Councilmember Stewart and a second by Councilmember Bailey, and to set the public hearing for March 16, 2021. And we'll ask for a roll call vote on this item. We'll have
Bailey? Bailey? Bowen?
Sorry, aye.
Oh.
Aye.
Okay, Bowen?
Yes.
Bush? She's late. Dolly?
Yes.
Glover?
Aye.
Henderson? Hall? Cantor?
Yes.
Knoop?
Aye.
Overson?
Yes.
Perry?
yes.
Peterson?
Yes.
Silvestrini?
Yes.
Sondeck?
Yes.
Stewart?
Yes.
Theodore?
Yes.
Westmoreland?
Yes.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you, Cindy. Item 10 on the agenda, this is page 19 of your packet. This is an update on weighted voting. We'll ask Chief Peterson to review this.
So this is just reflecting the latest numbers from population that come from Chem Gardner, and those are published. In addition, we had the transition of Riverton, Harriman, and Alta back and forth between UFSA and UFA. So this reflects the accurate member fee accounting that lays out. And as a reminder, this isn't applied except for a budget amendment or adoption and can be called out by various members. But we keep this available. It's going to be in your packets, and Cindy is always prepared to apply it should someone call out that member fee system. But we did see about a 1.8% increase in population. So we're serving just under 430,000 today, and it was a variety of issues. But if you have any deeper questions, let me know. But this number shows where it sits. Just as any questions on that issue? Yes, Mayor Sondeck.
I just have one. I think that's pretty straightforward. I'm just curious, do the member fees for member fee for Brighton, does that reflect a recreation area contribution accounting, or is this just their nominal fee?
It takes the basically the UFSA members. You take the total service area value and divide it up amongst the service area providers, and then that defines the member fee. We don't do it any other way because the UFSA is one member.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Great, so that's in there. Just know it's there, and that Cindy's always prepared to deal with it should it be called out. But we have yet to have that system called out yet as an option to vote.
Okay. Thank you, Chief. I'll just have you go ahead and continue on to your fire chief report.
Okay, first one is just to talk about the closest forces response in the Salt Lake Valley and share that realistically, this is the one where we have dropped our borders between our neighbors. We're going back and forth across, really to make sure that the community can win across borders, and then addressing any kind of imbalance that might come about. We've adopted a report that comes straight out of the CAD system that's monitoring unit hours, personnel hours, and unit events. But one of the things we're also working on is a priority 1 and 2. So a priority 1 call is going to be defined as one where 30 seconds can make a huge difference in the outcome of a patient or a situation of fire. And priority 2 is not so critical. Time is important, but 30 seconds to a minute doesn't make a substantial difference. Probably March 1st, we're waiting to make sure that the dispatch center can accomplish this. We'll transition to where priority 2s, we don't cross borders automatically. We just do it by agency, and priority 1s, we continue to cross borders. So I'm going to share my screen and just talk about what this looks like. And can you see this screen?
It's still, there it is.
Okay, so this shows, it says at the top, Salt Lake Valley Mutual Aid Report, UFA. We built this through a system right out of the CAD data, and we shared it with each of our neighbors. So every department has what their numbers look like, right? At the top, basically, we're tracking from October 1 and really to today. So the data is pretty well live as we're able to track that. We're able to sort by apparatus type or call type and look at the different components. The system, is it scrolling down okay for everybody? Good. Sometimes it doesn't do that. And it takes each community and it shows unit hours, how much we've given, how much we've received, and what that balance looks like. And then it goes into personnel hours, given, received, balance, unit events, given and received. And you can see it's a variety of different issues that come, and then you end up with the total and where it balances. Like you'll notice that totally we've given 882 hours, received 1,000 hours by unit, but because we offer a 4-person staffing, some departments are sending 2 units to get to 4 people. But in our personnel hours, we've given 3,000 and received 2.5 with a 1,932 hour or 460 hour balance. Events, out of all of this, we're only off balance by 27. And you can kind of see where that fits. But what's curious in this and what's important for all of us to remember, and as I scroll down, you'll see unit hours and personnel hours on a trend line throughout since October 1st. What's interesting is that there's a few specific calls that make big differences. On December 24th, for instance, we received 20 hours and gave 5, but that was a structure fire in Riverton, and resources from West Jordan and South Jordan came into that fire, and that can make a bit of a spike compared to the routine medical aid calls that occur. On January 1st, we had a house fire in Sandy where we sent resources into Sandy for an extended period of time. On January 17th, this was the commercial fire in Midvale. You can see the huge spike that gets for bringing resources in. We received resources from Sandy, Draper, South Jordan, West Jordan, South Salt Lake, West Jordan, and Murray. So that created a huge change in the view. Then over here on January 31, we had a bit of a spike. February 3rd was a traffic accident in the West Valley that was pretty extensive. And then really you can go all the way to yesterday where we had a house fire in Midvale and resources from Murray, South Jordan, West Jordan, and Sandy. In the last few months, UFA's had more of the fires than maybe is typical. So you can picture in the next 4 months, all it would take would be a potential fire in another neighborhood, a fire in Sandy, a fire in West Valley, and these numbers start to look a little more balanced. when we scroll down to look at the mapping, this kind of plots where each of the mutual aids occur. The blue is the mutual aid we receive, and kind of the orange is mutual aid that we provide. And like you would expect, the borders show the differences. So you can see the borders around Murray. You can see the borders around West Valley, that the far west side of Kearns generates a lot of resources brought from Kearns because that station is closer. But then in this area, we're seeing a lot of mutual aid that we're providing. And this is where the balance goes back and forth. When you get rid of the political boundary, the community is going to win. These numbers will go down a bit when we only are looking at the priority 1 calls versus priority 1 and 2. Then as we scroll down, it can change in how it looks. And you can see the different borderline calls that occur all the way through. So this system is what we're looking for, the trend lines, and we are ready now for anybody that wants to sit and talk about this a little bit more. Like Councilman Stewart, I know you are ready to talk about this. We're going to go through it and we're going to make this work. The key is going to be that we really need about probably 20 months, 12 months at least of data to get a good feeling for the ebb and the flow. You can see how one major fire in the city of Midvale can swing the numbers pretty significantly. But the important thing for me is that I come to you and share the different imbalances. And if, for instance, we receive significantly more from West Valley going forward, I'm going to talk to that chief about how we balance that out for him. And we may look at some ways to make that fit to where we're not taking full advantage of that engine that's sitting on the far west side of Kearns. And if South Jordan ends up receiving a lot more resources than we give over a 12-month period, I'll meet with that chief and we'll talk about how do we fix this? What do we deal with? But the first change we're making is the change from priority 1 and 2. Because a person who's in a care facility who needs some really basic care and support, and time doesn't matter, we don't need to cross into South Jordan to help that person. The South Jordan can handle that themselves. That'll correct some of the back and forth that fits in there. Mayor Overson, I know you talked about wanting to see this data as well. We'll be able to drill down into the community itself and look at specifically what's going on in those communities, and then look at each of these call and plots. But it's going well. The resource sharing between really the agencies that are working together every day is very effective, very helpful, and the working relationship between us and those other 8 agencies is going really well. Any questions on this?
Chief, my only, I guess, question long term is, you know, I respect everybody's, you know, desire to self-provide if it's in the best interest of their city. So I'd be interested in looking at places like, you know, a Bluffdale and whatnot. I can't recall what that data was, but does it ever get into a situation where the perception is that people aren't, or municipalities aren't staffing to the same level we are, and essentially you end up, you know, supporting their budgeting decision to underfund their department? I guess it's the kind of the question I would have long term.
Well, and I think the first step for me is agreeing on the data, right? And not getting into supposition or any of that. And we do have an agreement on the data. Every fire chief has come in and met with our team to review the data. So instead of going on conjecture, now we're going on actual data. And we're breaking up this to address exactly what you're describing. It's not just the events that cost us. What we're looking at is how many times are the people you're paying to protect your communities outside of our area providing service to a neighboring community? And how many times is a neighboring community outside of their area serving us? And until we look at the real data, all you can do is go on what you most recently felt, right? Or the amount of times. And in reality, we have to look at the data. So the positive thing is today is we have an agreement that this is accurate data. We have an agreement that this is real, and I can have that dialogue. So if, for instance, in South Jordan, we find ourselves giving significantly more over a longer period of time, that is exactly the dialogue. And we find a solution to it. But operationally, I want to tell my battalion chiefs and captains, go do your job every day, do the best you can for the community, and let me sort out on the back end how to make that fair and address that. I'm really comfortable that with this data now in place and with Versaterm in place that we can do that. Sandy, for instance, has been isolated from our system because they're dispatched by Salt Lake City. But now today, they're all in as a partner. They're crossing borders. We're taking care of things so that when in fact, Station 116 is out of service on a call, a Sandy unit may be able to get in there and take care of that quickly. It's not going to make a huge impact on our global response times. What's going to happen though is a critical call is going to get taken care of faster because we're now looking for the closest resource. But to correct the problems that might occur, at least with the data, we're out of conjecture and we can deal with it accurately and directly. So, but the problem again is you can look at that one fire in Midvale and see how out of whack that can be, right? We can provide a whole lot of resource to a city in 5, 10, 15-minute increments, and then we have a massive fire, it completely throws it back. So I look at the value of how long are we getting those resources and how are we making that fit? So if Bluffdale gives a little bit more for a while, and then they have a working fire, that could drastically swing those numbers fast. Because right now, Bluffdale in the last 4 months has given more than they've got because they don't run a lot of calls and they haven't had a working fire.
Thanks, Chief. I wasn't calling out Bluffdale, by the way. I was just saying kind of as an example. I know, in fact, I think a few years back, we had this with this kind of scenario play out in West Jordan, I think, where it would just seem like we were constantly just supporting a portion of their city because they were unwilling to fund one of the stations. So anyway, thanks, Chief.
Yeah. And again, if what I do, I know already that I'll be reaching out to both Riverton and Taylorsville. And if any of you want to look at this number deeper, I don't want to do it now, but we'll dig in all we want. With that, the next item is on continuity of operations. And this just has to do with a fancy term that means how are we maintaining our staffing? How are we delivering our service, right? And I'll kind of walk through that 500 of our people have received the first dose of the vaccine. 430 are now getting their second dose. We still have about 90 people to schedule for the first dose. But right now, a little over 91% of the people that have been scheduled are taking the dose, which is a phenomenal percentage for us. Really happy with that. Our COVID leave has been reducing. So we were averaging about 4.5 per day in January, and we were in the 5 and 6s per day last fall. This really in February, just this month, we're down to 2.3 COVID leaves per day. So we're coming out of it on our worry, which is very positive. And honestly, sorry for most of you, but most of the COVID leave is coming from reactions to the second dose, right? So that's where that's coming. And so that's in and out, which we should see a pretty substantial drop off. In the last 30 days, we've done only 8 shifts of mandatory staffing to hold on to our staffing levels. And again, mostly because of the density of a second dose time. When we send 40 people from a single shift to get their second dose, we have a group of those that end up calling in sick. That's generated most of the mandatory staffing issues. But we have continued to maintain staffing. We've done it the whole time. Really impressed with our team. and their ability to step up during this. And I think some of the policy decisions that you guys have approved between overhiring, allowing me to have the flexibility to pay overtime for their time worked has been really positive. It's also given me a chance to evaluate the financial impact of basically paying overtime for everything, which means counting vacation and sick time as hours worked. Because of our model of maintaining constant staffing, that's been a very effective way to spread out the work. Last year, we had about 100 people that never worked a day of overtime. And this year, we had pretty much every employee work some overtime. And it's more cost effective for us to staff with a bit of overtime than it is to staff completely without, because we get to apply the filling of a hole on our terms, at the schedule that we need, as opposed to being maybe overstaffed on one day and then understaffed on another. You're gonna see me potentially bring to you a recommendation next month that we consider making this a permanent change. I've been waiting to do that until I could evaluate a bigger time frame, but I don't think I'm going to need substantially, if any, more budget to make that work on a permanent basis. Part of that has to do with the ability to use a vacation sellback option that we authorized earlier this year. So a person who decides, I don't want to work a lot of overtime, but I want to contribute. So instead of working extra shifts, they might want to come back on a day that their vacation plans changed. And they work back, and we basically pay them off on their vacation hours, and they come back to work. It's a good thing for them. It's a good thing for us. And it ends up paying straight time to fill the vacancy. And I'm also evaluating the value of doing this on the civilian side so that finance can have a simpler process in payroll. And I'll talk more about that next month. I'm going to make the final kind of decision whether I'm comfortable with it. But you can expect me to bring it as a specific agenda item next month to propose a policy change. Any questions or concerns on that topic that I should be thinking about? Or did I just confuse everybody on the topic? That could be too. Okay, very good. Then the last thing is just the legislative update. I'll keep this short. We're monitoring about 30 bills. We're trying to restrict what we really focus on. There's about 12 bills we're supporting. Most of these are just things that make life a little better for our community. That's been a focus for us. And a few bills have been concerning. I'm sure there's a number of them for you as well. We're really focused in on 3 bills that are the most concerning, and we're having good progress on addressing them. House Bill 98 allows for the permit applicant to opt out of certain inspections, and we've been working through that pretty effectively. But in essence, our worry is that our plans review work would really be circumvented if this particular bill goes through, and we wouldn't be able to make sure that the sprinkler requirements or the safety features that are there for residents are assured to make happen. We believe that the concern is, of course, the time that some cities are taking to get their reviews done. And we believe that the bill is going to focus a little more on the offenders than it is on everybody globally. We see that evolving, and we've been able to maintain and keep up with those issues. So we would see that not being an impact if that comes true. House Bill 169 starts to limit powers during a state of emergency. We've worked on this pretty hard. Clint Meekum and Mayor Silvestrini have been kind of available to us, but our lobbyists have done a good job of helping this kind of go as a group of people have done this. We believe it's been abandoned and potentially replaced with Senate Bill 195. We're still a little bit concerned with this one, and mostly it's because it's a 24-hour pre-notice for public health emergencies. We may not have that kind of time, but we're looking at that as an option, and the sponsors are willing to talk about that. Senate Bill 155 is a bill that creates a fund for 988, the suicide hotline. We're very much in favor of the suicide hotline addressing the national issues, very much in favor of a way for people to dial a number and get help before they enter into the 911 system. Our only concern with this has been the fact that they want to use the same funds that are in essence supplying funds for 911. And we're really concerned about additional taxes coming on a phone line and then the potential stress it would put on our 911 system. The 988 doesn't really bring a lot of calls off of the 911 system. It absolutely can get help in a critical way, just not in the right space. We believe this is going to move into a task force for a little more study. And we're very much supportive and will be a part of that task force. But just can't look at, like, our specific center at VEC gets about 7 million in money from 911 taxes that helps offset our service and helps make that service work. If that were to weaken, the only place to come from is now direct additional taxes to pay from the residents that are making that happen. Our committee's done well, our lobbyist has done well. Several of you are getting the emails and weighing in. The legislators are very interested in what we're thinking, and they're being very responsive to our issues as we go through. Any questions or comments on the legislative process for us? Very good, thank you. That's all I have.
Thank you, Chief Peterson, for those reports. Item 12 on the agenda, we do have a need for a closed session today. It should be brief, I believe, but before we move into that, let me ask Pat to kind of give a rundown of how we'll handle that.
Okay, so for the closed session with the Zoom stuff is kind of difficult, but we tried to keep stuff as simple as possible. So within your chat icon, I'm just about to send a link. So I just sent a link, so that'll take you to the separate closed session. You'll do the closed session there. Once you're finished, just go back to that initial Zoom link. So the one that Cindy sent out for this meeting. So it's essentially leave this meeting, go to the closed session link. I just sent it in the chat. If you can't get the chat to pop up, just wave or something. I'll try and send you a direct invite, but
Don't go yet.
yeah, hang tight just for a second. So I think you guys have to motion first, then click it. Then once you're in the closed session, finish that, then you'll come back. Correct, Chair Perry?
Yeah,
Okay.
so, yeah.
Yeah.
Before anyone leaves, then we'll look for a motion to enter closed session.
And make clear that we'll adjourn the UFA meeting at the end of the closed session. So we won't come back into open session.
Okay. Yeah, so
I'll make the motion that we move into a closed session, and a closed session described under Utah Code 524205 may be held for specific purposes, including but not limited to discussion of character, professional competence, or physical or mental health of an individual, strategy sessions for discussion pending or reasonable imminent litigation, strategy sessions to discuss the purchase, exchange, or lease of real property, discussion regarding deployment of security personnel, devices, or systems, and investigate proceedings regarding allegations of criminal misconduct. And also to adjourn the meeting at the close of that closed session. Does that work, Brian?
Yes, works great. Thank you.
Mayor Westmoreland, I'll second.
Okay, thank you. Got a motion by Councilmember Stewart, a second by Mayor Westmoreland, and we'll have a roll call vote on this item.
Bailey?
Aye.
Bowen?
Aye.
Bush? Dolly?
Yes.
Glover?
Aye.
Henderson? Hall? Cantor?
Yes.
Knut? Overson?
Yes.
Perry?
Yes.
It's Knut. Okay, Perry. Peterson? He left. Silvestrini?
Yes.
Sondak?
Yes.
Stewart?
Yes.
Theodore?
Yes.
Westmoreland?
Yeah, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, so now go ahead and follow that link in the chat for the closed session.
Cindy, because I forgot that we needed to take this vote and went over there. I don't see that in my chat anymore. Can you or somebody, there it is. Okay, thank you, Pat.
Welcome. Looks like there's just a couple. Did the chat stuff pop up for you?
Yeah, I don't see it.
Okay. Let me see if I can pull it up. Do you see the chat icon? Let me see if I can just send it to you directly. Okay. So if you look at just the bottom of your screen, there's just a little chat icon. So if you click, okay, if you clicked add a box, should pop up someplace. Sometimes it pops up top, bottom side. Do you see it?
So I've got chat, then there's 3 different.
Okay, links.
Just hit one of those.
Yep, just pick one. It'll take it to the fresh Zoom meeting. It might ask, like, do you want to leave this current meeting? Then just click yes. There it goes. Nice.
Pat, thanks for getting everyone moved around. Always
No problem.
keeps it going.
Always
So
fun.
There we go.
Okay, I'm just checking over who's here.